Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I'm your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and today is episode 118. It's going to be short and sweet, but it is definitely interesting. Today we're going to take a look at the Justice, Prisoner, and Alien Transportation System. So this one is very interesting. I knew nothing about it. Definitely learned a lot. But let me say this in regards to a little bit of housekeeping. So we are obviously in the month of July, and so I looked up what are some of the different things that we celebrate in the month of July, or that, what is it the month of? And the month of July is Independent Retailer Month. So if you know of anyone that's like a mom and pop shop, or they own their own business, especially like maybe they have an online business, like say for example on Etsy, things like that, do support them. Their money is not it's not the same as like going to a big retailer. So, yes, retailers are awesome. Those are good and wonderful things. But, what people forget is that these big box stores, a lot of them were founded by mom and pop shops. And then, they expand, they grow, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. They employ a lot of people. I'm just saying that everybody has to start somewhere. So I think it's really good to help out your local community, your local business owners, whether it's a small business, medium-sized business, or even a large corporation. If you know someone, for example, let's say you know someone that owns, a bunch of car dealerships within your city, and you know that they do really good business, then give them your business, when you get a new car. Things like that. Just help each other out. That's really good. And plus you will be helping not only our society, but our economy, especially because we are a democracy. We are also a capitalistic society, which is really awesome because we are one of the few societies that the government does not control every little thing, and we have fair trade, free trade, and that is a wonderful thing for the United States to have. So don't throw those things away. So do support your independent retailers locally. I think that's a wonderful thing. And do check out Etsy if you have not already. There are some really nice, kind shop owners on there, and literally they own their own business. And they're not some huge retailer. And again, I'm not against retailers. They serve their purpose. The United States would not be successful as much as it is without these big box stores and without the big retailers that we know. But like I said, all these retailers that we have today, they have humble beginnings. None of them started out big and started out, eating from a silver spoon. You say, for example, Walmart, that is definitely some humble beginnings, and look how well they're doing. It's really quite wonderful what they do. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started on this one. Again, it is the Justice, Prisoner, and Alien Transportation System. It was founded in 1995. I didn't realize it was that fairly recent per se. Their parent company, like who was originally in charge of it and who handled this stuff, was the U.S. Marshals Service, but they merged with another entity within the federal government on this. So let's dive into this one. It says the Justice, Prisoner, and Alien Transportation System, also known as JPATS, nicknamed Con Air, is an agency of the federal government of the United States charged with the transportation of persons in legal custody among prisons, detention centers, courthouses, and other locations. It is the largest prison transport network in the world. I'm not surprised by that because we are one of the few nations on this planet that actually arrest bad people and put them in prison. Almost every other country you can buy your way out of something. The United States is not like that. We do not practice bribery, hence we arrest people. It says, though primarily used by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Federal Bureau of Prisons. I was thinking FBI, but that's not what this says. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, or U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, JPATS also assists military and state law enforcement. JPATS was formed in 1995 from the merger of the Marshals Service Air Fleet with that of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. So they combined themselves to be under one big umbrella, probably so that way they could better utilize their resources, which is really good, because they're probably trying to consolidate and not use too many funds, of course. It says JPATS completes more than 260,000 prisoner alien movements per year. Air Fleet operations are located in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with hubs in Las Vegas, Nevada, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. I did not know that this had anything to do with Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Learned something new, that is for sure. Goes on to say, usually the airline employs Boeing 737s aircraft to transport convicts and illegal residents of the United States for extradition. I would be very surprised if we transport, that previous number that we mentioned in regards to extradition, because we have a lot of sanctuary cities. We should not have sanctuary cities. We have too many illegal people here in the United States. They are putting a strain on our resources. They are putting a strain on our healthcare system. If someone's not legally here, they should not be here. It's one thing if someone is visiting and, going on a vacation, whatever the case may be, but to live here illegally, hence the word illegal, that's not right. Because, see, here's the thing, other countries don't allow that. It's almost unheard of for that to happen in Iran or Russia, places like that. Like, they ship people out. They don't wait. They don't give you a chance to give you some sob story or something. It just doesn't happen like that. So we need to stop being suckers and actually defend our country and protect it. It says smaller jets and turboprops are also used to transport individual prisoners who are considered particularly dangerous or notorious, as well as individuals in the Witness Protection Program. Let's see here, turning the page. It says, for a plane full of 200 inmates, only 12 marshals are required. I think that number is too low. I think they need to have more, because that concerns me there. However, more than likely they are packing heat or tasers. It says marshals are trained with aircraft emergency procedures, very similar to flight attendants. It says today's JPAT's fleet has expanded to 3 full-size aircraft. I'm surprised it's not more, just because we do arrest people here in the United States. Inmates scheduled to fly are given little or no advance notice of their flight to deter escapes and sabotage and to prevent harm from outsiders. Passengers aboard a flight are restrained with handcuffs as well as ankle and waist chains, which are double or even triple locked. Those who pose additional danger may be forced to wear additional restraints, such as reinforced mittens that completely isolate and almost completely immobilize the hands, handcuff covers which conceal the keyholes, and face masks to prevent biting and spitting. However, due to FAA regulations, inmates are not physically restrained to their seats. I'm very surprised by that. In any way except for seat belts used during takeoff and landing. Flight and seating arrangements are made carefully with the intent to separate inmates who may conflict with one another. That's smart. Members of rival prison gangs may be transported on different days to help reduce the risk of an in-flight incident. That's smart. Unlike the practice of most jails, male and female inmates fly together on the same planes. That I'm kind of surprised by, but I bet it's the only time they get to be around the opposite sex. I will say this, I do remember that movie Con Air with Nicolas Cage, but I didn't know that name actually was real, Con Air, in regards to our justice prisoner and alien transportation system. I didn't know that was legit per se. I just thought it was a movie. In 97, I would have either been in the 7th grade or about to go into the 8th grade, so I was a teeny bopper. For sure. So not always aware of all these little things. But this is a very important system that we have here in the United States, because we do need to be able to transport prisoners safely and efficiently and without doing any harm to them or to other people on the plane, especially anybody else that's flying with them, but especially the pilot and the flight attendants and things like that. I also want to give a big shout out to the U.S. Marshals Service, because they do a lot of work behind the scenes. And I think there's a lot of work that they do that we don't know about in regards to keeping our country safe. And so I want to give a big shout out to them, as well as to, what was the other one? The Immigration and Naturalization Service. I wish that the Immigration and Naturalization Service, if they are still operating in terms of, naturalization, what all they handle in terms of that, I think they need to be more particular about who they allow into the United States, because the United States can sometimes be very ignorant of the ways of the world. And it's just sometimes we look like a sucker because we're too nice to people. And I don't mean that gives us permission to be mean or hateful. I'm not saying that at all because I don't live that way. So I always try and be as nice, as kind as I possibly can. And I do try and give people the benefit of the doubt. I just want to say this in token with that. We need to recognize who our enemies are, especially to the nation of the United States, because we are a nation. And so with that comes great responsibility. I mean, just think about all the people that live here in the United States, citizens or, residents or people that are here illegally. We need to keep our country safe. At the same time, we need to make sure that whenever we are transporting prisoners of any kind, whether state or federal, whether dangerous or non-dangerous, they need to be safe in flight and on the ground. So needless to say, we have a lot of people that do good work in regards to keeping our country safe, keeping our inmates safe, and things of that nature. I'm just saying we can always do a better job. For sure. Like, for example, our prison system needs a lot of work. I think there's a lot they need help with. I think it's been underfunded for such a long time that it's just been kind of forgotten about. And I say that because Oklahoma has one of the highest incarceration rates in the United States. So obviously, Oklahomans, we know what we're talking about in regards to prisons, prisoners, ex-cons, things like that. I will say this, considering how many people we have incarcerated here, and I've met some of these people over the years, these prisoners, they need to be chained to their seats on a flight. I understand the FAA, if that's true. The FAA has these regulations, but see, here's the thing. Regulations for inmates are not equivalent to regulations on regular, everyday people that have not committed a crime and that are not serving a prison sentence. Usually when people are in prison, they're there for a reason. Every once in a while, there are innocent people that go to jail. However, just because they're flying somewhere, that doesn't mean that we can let our guard down. So needless to say, I'm very appreciative of the U.S. Marshals Service and all their agents that they have, because they do a lot of work, like I said, behind the scenes that we don't know about. And think about every time they leave their house, it's just like when a cop goes to their shift. Every day when they go to work, they're taking a chance of getting killed. They just are. That's the nature of the job. It's not the same as like working in an office or at a retailer. It's just not. Because the very nature of their job is danger. That's just what it is. So these people are tough that do these kinds of jobs. I can definitely see why I would never be in that position. I would never do that type of work. First of all, I don't mean this in a sexist way towards women, but I'm a woman. I think it would be very difficult for me to overpower a male inmate, and I think that would put my safety and other people's safety in jeopardy if I was left with that responsibility. Also, women get very scared very easily. That's just the nature of being female. And that's just how it is. Like there was this one guy I dated several years ago. He was an absolute moron and an idiot. Hence, we're not dating anymore, but he just wasn't aware of his surroundings like I was. Like, he just didn't get it. And he had a not very positive opinion of women, even as a young man, in his 20s, around my age. And so, at that time, and I just thought, what a moron and an idiot. Like, he doesn't understand that safety is an issue for women. Like, we have to be careful when we're walking to our car at a mall. We have to be careful when we're walking from our car to a door, especially at night. He just didn't get it. So I think that whenever someone is oblivious to the environment, they are putting themselves at risk, and also they are not practicing their due diligence as a good citizen to just be socially aware of your surroundings. So needless to say, I do not date men that are oblivious to their surroundings, or if they don't care, or if they're like, oh, you women, you complain too much. I'm like, oh, really? Well, why don't you try weighing less than a man, can't lift as much weight as a man, and you can easily be overtaken by someone. I mean, that's just, it's a little scary. Like, there's a reason why, women have these defense courses. They learn how to protect themselves. Men don't take those kinds of courses. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to realize that the people that put their life on the line, they do this freely and willingly. Yes, it is a job and they're getting paid to do it, but they freely and willingly are taking on this responsibility to keep whoever they are in charge of safe. Not just from bad people, but from, accidents that could happen and things like that. So it's a lot of responsibility. I'll mention this as well. Like there's this one guy I dated. We didn't date too long. I kind of wish it had worked out, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad it ended. He was a horrible driver. He was a very dangerous driver. Scared me, just terrified me every time we got in his car. I think I was only in his car like twice. And that was all I could take. Because I was like, is this really how you drive? He's like, yeah, what's wrong with it? I was like, you're an idiot. I was like, you're putting our lives at risk. You're not following the rules or laws of the road. You're putting other people at risk as well on the highway. I was like, I just don't like being in your car. And he drove a really crappy Honda, just because it got great gas mileage. Like he was cheap. He was, very much pinching his pennies, so to speak. And I don't find that attractive in men. I'm not saying that I would necessarily prefer someone that's broke all the time because I spend all their money. I'm not saying that. But whenever someone is willing to sacrifice safety for money, I got a big problem with that. I'll give an example of where it's not dating related, but like, for example, some of those episodes of Why Planes Crash, that Mayday show, you'd be surprised how many episodes are dealing with plane crashes where the plane crashed because the company did not want to pay to have proper equipment. They didn't want to spend money on safety. Even though if you don't have safety, you don't have a plane, you don't have human lives. So it's one of those things, I take safety very seriously, and if I don't like how a guy drives, I dump him almost immediately. This guy, I didn't dump him immediately because I was very interested in him, but I was like, you know what? I would never want him to be driving me to the hospital. We might die on the way to the hospital. Like he might, if ever we got married and have kids, he might kill one of our children. Like that's how bad a driver he was. He was so weird, off the charts with his driving. And here's the thing, if you were to meet him and talk to him, you wouldn't think he was a horrible driver, but he just was. I was like, do you not know the rules of the road and just safety in general? It was really bizarre. So needless to say, if I don't like how a guy drives, I don't date him. If he's cheap and all he thinks about is money, I don't date him, because that really irritates me, because it tells me he's not willing to work hard. And he's also not willing to spend money where he needs to spend money. Like he's always trying to cut corners. And that's what this guy did. He would cut corners on stuff. I mean, he just, it was horrible. But anyway, that's a character flaw when someone doesn't drive appropriately. Also, if they're too cheap on stuff, that's a character flaw. It really is. And it is a choice, but it's also a character flaw. Because they're willing to look the other way on certain things because of money. There are certain things that I don't think you should ever look the other way, ever. But there are certain things that when you look the other way, especially when it comes to safety, that's a really serious offense. So anyway, I do think we just need to be cautious about, who we associate with, who we allow to drive. And let me say this. Most of the time I drive myself wherever I go. I've had some bad experiences with other people that are driving, and, if I get in someone's car, it's because I trust them wholeheartedly, with my whole heart. But if I don't trust someone wholeheartedly, I don't ever get in their car. They may be a nice person, maybe a kind person, but, I just have to be strict like that. That's just how I operate. But again, big shout out to the Marshal Service, big shout out to all the people that work in our Justice Department and our prisons. I don't think they get enough credit for the work that they do, because also our prison guards are putting their life on the line every day as well, because they're dealing with the worst of society. Now again, not everybody that is in prison deserves to be there. Some people were set up by the prosecution or the prosecutor. Others were put in there and because there was a dirty cop, forged evidence. I mean, there's all these different things that can happen. There are innocent people in prison. But, what's interesting about the United States is that one of the reasons why we're such a wonderful country is because we actually have groups that actually look into cases where, hey, there's a possibility this person's innocent, so we need to look into this case. And they help them appeal their case and get a retrial. Other countries don't really do that. A lot of countries, they lock you up and throw away the key. So I think we need to be appreciative that, yes, we do have a justice system, a judicial system. Is it perfect? No. But it's not hardly flawed like some other countries. And then when we do make mistakes in those decisions, we do everything we can to correct them. And we have these organizations, these foundations, and these nonprofits that help people get the justice that they seek. One of the problems I think we have in our judicial system is that people, they just want a quick arrest. They just want to put someone away in jail just to have that feeling, oh, we caught the person. Well, if you haven't really caught the person, then guess what? You haven't really caught the person. So I do think we need to give cops a chance to investigate properly. And if a cop doesn't know how, I'm going to say a cop, an investigator, because there's different types of cops. If an investigator doesn't know how to properly investigate, they should not be a police officer and they should not be a police detective. Because they lack that, well, first of all, wisdom, but they lack the insight to properly identify what is a crime, what is a real crime, and who is the culprit, who is the actual person that committed the crime. Just because they can pin it on somebody, that doesn't mean that they got the right person. We've seen that over and over again here in Oklahoma. So, needless to say, the Bible Belt, sometimes they are quick to arrest people and they should not. They are quick to throw the book at people when they should not. Sometimes we have juries that do not understand that someone that's being accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty. Like, you have to prove that someone's guilty before they're actually guilty. And even then, circumstantial evidence is not evidence. Circumstantial evidence, I'll close with this, circumstantial evidence is very fickle evidence because it's not real. It can be swayed. Real evidence is factual. Like, for example, we know that the United States was founded in 1776. We know that to be true. That's not circumstantial evidence, that is evidence. We know because of the Constitution of the United States, and we know because of the Revolutionary War that we won against Great Britain. Circumstantial evidence would be like, well, we think the United States may have actually become a country in 1785. I'm just making this up. But we don't have any evidence to prove that. But we're just going to say it's 1785. And you could make all these arguments about, when Congress actually was enacted and when they started, really vamping things up and, trying to help the country do certain things and set up programs and policies. Well, technically, they didn't have programs back then because it was unheard of to be socialist back then. Maybe we should go back to those times. It'd be great for the United States. We wouldn't have inflation like this. But what I'm saying is that circumstantial evidence means you can sway it. Well, that should not be admissible in a court of law because it's no longer a court of law if you have circumstantial evidence. Because I look at it this way, I wouldn't like it at all if someone falsely accused me of something and then got me convicted based on circumstantial evidence. It's not, first of all, I would not have committed the crime. And number two, circumstantial evidence is not factual. So I look at from that point of view, like, would I want to be treated like that? No, I would definitely feel like my rights are being violated because they would be violated in that situation. So I think we need to go back to an earlier time in our history, not too long ago, but even back to the 80s or 90s, where circumstantial evidence was not utilized all the time, if at all. It stupidly got admitted into court by some really corrupt lawyers, not judges, lawyers. And because these judges were just being browbeaten by these lawyers wanting their way, they allow circumstantial evidence now. Well, it's not evidence if it's circumstantial. And I say this as someone that lives in Oklahoma and knows that we have such a high incarceration rate. It's horrible. It shouldn't be like that, but unfortunately it is. And so thank goodness for these nonprofit groups and these organizations that really do try and help people basically, they're innocent, get them out of jail. Get them out of jail as soon as possible instead of delaying it. So that's one of those things that we do need to work on and we need to do a better job of. But anyway, today's podcast again was about the justice, prisoner, and alien transportation system. I will go ahead and let you guys go, but until next time, I pray that you're happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.